Good morning to everybody. It wasn't long after the Constitution was ratified and Washington became president that more and more thought was given to the financial setup of the country. And it was on this date, May 17, in 1792, that some bankers and other money people got together in New York City and signed the agreement which led to the founding of the New York Stock Exchange. This print of finance people working together during the Middle Ages reminds us that bankers and other money people like to get together to make money. So this is the Amsterdam Stock Exchange from the 1600s, probably the first stock exchange in the West. And one of the reasons it came to existence was the existence of this company, the Dutch East India Company, which traded all over the world, but particularly in the area of Indonesia. So people would invest in spices, and they needed a place to trade, and that first started in Amsterdam. Well, when the war with Britain was done in 1783, and here's a reminder of the Treaty of Paris, the painter didn't finish this painting, I guess, because he was really mad that the Brits lost. One of the big issues was how do you organize the economy, and in the first cabinet you'll note that one of the cabinet positions was the Secretary of the Treasury. So the cabinet wasn't very big initially, but it did have the Secretary of the Treasury, and that was Alexander Hamilton. And one of the big issues that Hamilton and others dealt with was all the war debts that the states had when the war was over, and the federal government decided to absorb all those debts from the states. And one thing Hamilton really believed in was the Bank of the United States, a national bank, kind of modeled on what was in London. So the Bank of the United States was set up, it was chartered for a few years, and in 1790 was the first stock exchange in our country in Philadelphia. So this predates our event by a couple of years. Well, by the time we got to 1792, there was a lot of speculation. There were a lot of people in debt, and the first big depression of the new country happened. It's known as the Panic, 1792. Panics were the words they used back then for depressions or recessions. And here's our event. That same year, some financiers and other money people got together under a Buttonwood tree, a sycamore tree, supposedly, and signed the Buttonwood Agreement. And one thing it did was say you were only going to trade with people from our group, because there had been all kinds of wild speculators and shysters. So part of the deal was we're only going to trade with people we know, and we're going to keep the commissions the same. So the idea was if you joined this group, no one would undercut anybody, and that would lead to stability. Now there's a lot of money floating around North America. One were the pieces of 8 by the Spanish, pictured here. These were divided into fractions, and this is one reason why the New York Stock Exchange and stocks were often had eighths and quarters based on this piece of 8. Well, next year in 1793, the group met at this coffee house in Lower Manhattan. They were getting bigger and bigger. The country was growing, and in 1812, with the War of 1812 pictured here, the Lake Erie part, the federal government really got more and more involved in the economy, and the economy was getting larger, it was getting more diverse. So eventually the group changed its name to the New York Stock and Exchange Board. They made that name change in 1817. So you can see it's sort of like the New York Stock Exchange. And then in 1863, the group met at 18 Broad Street, where they are today. And today they take up that whole city block, but initially they took up just the building. So the New York Stock Exchange is on Broad Street. Maybe you've been there. So the next time you're at your computer buying and selling or looking at your mutual funds, whatever, think of that group that met under a tree in 1792.